So this is what we're making, a little forged pendant that looks a bit like a snake to match the forged snake ring that we did earlier. So this is just looped around to go over a chain. And that's it. Nice and simple. For this, we're going to take about 80 mil, slightly over 3 inches in the old money, half round wire, 3 millimeters wide, 1.5 millimeters high. And this you can just chop with your side cutters. You saw it if you want. We don't get to do this very often. Now, we need to anneal this, step roll the end into a taper, and then we'll file it, and file the other end slightly round using your number 2 cut flat hand file. So that's good enough. And the tapered end, don't worry about for now. So anneal this. And we'll just bring that up to a dull red. Just make sure there's no flux or solder on your soldering block to get on the metal. So that's a dull red. Quench it, and at this time you don't need to pickle it. So dry it off. If you have access to a rolling mill, just close it gently so it's all the way closed. Then you're going to put your wire in sideways and go until it won't go. So go progressively smaller until it won't go. Then roll it about 30 mil so you can see that it's just hit the edge. Yeah. So then go to the next one and roll about 15 mil, and then the next one about 7.5, the next one 3 mil. So what you've got is a taper, and the inside edge will be slightly curved, but we're just going to file this now to take those ripples out. So once again, your 6-inch flat number 2 cut hand file, and if you scrub this sideways as you push forward, you'll have a nice taper with no ripples in it. So do both sides and the top and bottom. You want it nice and smooth. Now if you file cheddars like that, you're either not holding your metal tight enough or you have the wrong angle on the file. And when it does that, then I turn the file so that it's straighter. So when all of the rolling mill marks out, we're going to take our 400 grade paper on a sanding stick, take the file marks out, so when you're finished, you'll have a nice satin finish on the metal. Now we're going to take the end that we rounded and we're going to forge using the round side of our jeweler's hammer or the rounded side of a planishing hammer. Now the pearl that we're using is only 6 mil, so we only need a 6 mil round bit on the end of our metal. So that's plenty. Now we're going to form this into a cup, so we need to anneal it again because it's well and truly work hardened at the moment. So you're just going to need to anneal the two ends. The middle will still be annealed, and we need the tail end annealed because we're going to form it. So bring that up to a dull red, and then this bit on the end, bring it to a dull red. So that's it. And now quench it. And we still don't have to pickle this yet. Now when I did this last time, I used a doming block to hit this into, and when we do it that way we leave a mark on the back that we have to tidy up. So what I'm going to do is just use my 6mm doming punch. I'm going to make a depression in my wooden block. Then I'm going to put this over the depression and just hammer with the doming punch right in the end. So we'll have our little cup for our pearl, and the back won't have any marks on it at all. Now at this point I'm going to take a 1mm drill bit, and I'm just going to, in the bottom of our cup, I'm just going to put a little depression. We don't want to go all the way through. And this is just so that we can take our 0.8 square sterling wire, file the end flat, and we're going to solder that in the end of this. So you can see I'm just resting the wire in the end. So a little bit of flux, and we're going to use hard solder. Not a lot. But I'm going to ball it up and pick it up with my solder pick. So we just heat the pick, touch it to the solder, it'll turn into a little ball. Then I'm going to heat this and place the solder. Like that. So now quench it and pickle it. Now grab the wire about 8 mil out. You can just run it down inside your parallel jaw pliers, and we're going to give it a good twist. Don't be too aggressive or you'll twist it off. But if it's a good solder joint, it should hold. So now I'm going to clip this about 2 millimeters long with the side cutters, because it doesn't have to be very long for the pearl to go on there. Now at this point we'll check our pearl for fit. So make sure it fits, make sure it's in the correct position. Hallmark this, and do it now while I'm thinking about it. So close to the middle, and you'll see why, because we're going to wrap this around the mandrel. Alright, pearl fits very nicely, and we can set that aside now. Now, what I want is to make a loop with this around a small mandrel, and I'll use what they call a bezel mandrel, which is a small version of a ring mandrel. And I'm going to go around the small end. For one reason is I'm going to try not to puncture my thumb by holding the pearl peg. Put a little piece of wood on it. And I try not to put marks in the metal that I'm going to have to clean out later. So by holding this with a piece of wood, I've got my form and no marks on the back. So this is to go around a chain, and we'll put a few squiggles in the tail, and I'll use flat round pliers. I was thinking it may be flat half round, but flat round, and we're going to be bending it sideways, which is going to make it interesting. So I'll hold this with my parallel jaw pliers. So I'm just going to twist this sideways. Then I'll grab the other side, twist it back the other way. And then so just back and forth a bit, so we give it a bit of personality. And then I'm going to grab the very end of the tail and just bend it up. So there's my little snake pendant. I'll bend that up a bit too, but nice and simple. Polish it up now, and my hallmark is visible. And take these marks out that you put in with your pliers, and then when it's all polished, glue your pearl on. Done. Now I'm going to use my split mandrel to take those plier marks out, because it fits in those curves quite nicely. Yeah. And it's quite easily done. Because there will only be marks right on the inside of the curve, and you don't have to run this back and forth. You just have to drop it in the curve. And that's just to get rid of all of our ugly marks. So now it can be polished. So now it's polished. Use 2-part epoxy to glue this on. Don't use super glue because it gets brittle. 5-minute epoxy is plenty good. And that's it. And because our tail is longer than the head, gravity will hold it so that it's vertical. Comme ça. If you don't have access to a rolling mill, you can just file this into a taper, or you can use your planishing hammer to forge it into a taper and then file it. So do the best you can with what you have.